Well, let's give them a Powerball for fantasy football. So, the Valentines, I guess Kelly Valentine can go babysit kids. And while Kelly Valentine was busy pimping Nick Jr. out to her other babysitter friends, well, then they like to sit Nick Valentine Jr. in front of a bunch of horror movies about slicing and dicing bodies up and shit. You know, so chainsaws and satanic rituals and cutting and slicing people up and shit because, well, that's what he likes. So then they're babysitting other people's children, their little babies and stuff, and they'll put them in a little walker or chair, you know, the little baby, push around cart. Just set them right in front of that TV with Paw Patrol, and then, well, a little bit of horror movies and stuff, and some Chainsaw Massacre stuff with some slicing and dicing and stabbing and stuff. And then what they do is they put those kids in their strollers and they stroll them up to US 1 and they park right in front of the store next to the hardware store so they can have Powerball footballs so that the people in the in crowd, for the sickos, can see which babies, and houses they hit next. So then the Department of Children and Families shows up to check on those sick kids that they created at the Valentine's house. So their money laundering scandal is laundering babies. And my mom, volunteered.
In half a mile, keep left to stay on Maryland 295 South.
Blah, blah, blah. And my mom said, I don't do laundry. My dad said, I don't do laundry. Because we don't launder kids for money in the Kirk family. But I hear it's a good business. Support that small business at the Valentine house.
Keep left to stay on Maryland 295 South.
And what they do is they'll pick up your babies, take them to their house, brainwash them a little bit before they're even old enough to talk. And as they get older, they can coach them in there and saw how much good babysitters they are. And then they just roll them up in front of Port St. John, or they roll them up in front of Titusville, wherever they gotta go, and they just sit there with those babysitting babies. And what do? Oh, well, you guys are down south, so you don't know about this, but Mr. Kirk said something while he was in the jail on a false crime about the heat, causing brain damage and not being able to clearly think. So we're wondering why they take those babies to a house and play all these crazy videos for the babies, and then they take those babies, even though they got a house that they've been living in, they take those babies in little strollers next to the hardware store, and they sit there in the hot sun with those babies they're babysitting instead of being inside a house or playing in the yard or something. No, they got them up front, right by US 1, next to Ace Hardware, because they're acing all those kids' hardware. And they're like, well, you got Nick Jr. that they already pimped out to the rest of their babysitter friends. And then Mr. Kirk had to call one of them and tell him to stop fucking with him. Because, well, the kid didn't have no money, although he's got a job. He was giving all of his money away to his cousin and his aunt, Kelly Valentine, and pawning all his stuff for money. And, well, Kelly gets a very substantial check from the Social Security Department, and she's living in a house babysitting kids. So while she's in there babysitting those kids, she's playing all kinds of drinking and drugging and everything else while playing violent movies and stuff with babies and shit around. And what they do is they go up next to the hardware store and say, watch these kids. These are the ones that are going to be our fantasy football fucking team next. So in DCF, looks for those kids that they've been babysitting. So you probably should be careful about who you have babysit your kids, especially at the Valentine house. You know, or they could be your secret Santas for your Halloween, Christmas massacres and shit. So that's the Valentine small business that you guys want to play doctor and nurse with, so they can doctor your children and play nurse to them later. I don't think we could be any more clearer about that.